Hello friends, today we'll paint a thistle together. It may seem like a simple plain weed, but it can turn into something truly beautiful and interesting. Let's start by placing it on the paper. Don't worry if you see some pencil marks. I started drawing earlier but erased it to begin fresh with you. First we'll draw the main part, which I'll refer to as the egg, since it resembles one. This will be our focal point, and below it, we'll add the flower's base. It's crucial to make sure the petals surrounding the egg are in the right position. Visualize a central point where the stem connects, and draw a guideline so that the egg sits perfectly on it, with the petals emerging from this central point, not from the sides. For the petals themselves, I suggest outlining their direction with curved lines, imagining them as if they're part of a little fountain. They should grow upwards initially, and then gently curve downwards, as if under the weight of gravity. After setting up the basic lines, we can start detailing the petals, focusing on how they emerge from the base and fan out. It's essential to give them a sense of freedom and space, ensuring they don't look too confined or too close to the centre. Keep in mind that large pencil marks can leave traces on watercolour paper, so be gentle. The drawing isn't particularly difficult, but it does require patience and time, almost like a form of meditation. Botanical work often demands this kind of slow, steady progress. Regarding colours, you'll need a light blue, which can be any shade you like, but if it's very bright, dilute it slightly. I'll also use ultramarine and indanthrene blue. If you don't have indanthrene, you can mix a dark brown with blue or add a touch of violet. The goal is to have 3 shades of blue: light, medium, and dark. For the leaves, I won't be using green at all. Instead, I'll mix blue with a bit of lemon yellow and perhaps some orange or brown to give it a warm tone. In summary, we'll work with 3 shades of blue and yellow tones, depending on your preference, along with a warm brown or ochre. We'll finalise the details with the brush, creating a well-structured base before moving on to the painting phase. In the beginning, I mentioned that this resembles an Easter egg, but it's actually the head of the thistle. Now, I'm outlining it with arcs, showing how the tiny flowers or elements inside the thistle are arranged. I'm not exactly sure of their correct botanical term, so let's just call them small flowers within the thistle. These tiny elements are arranged in a certain order. For botanical work, it's better to use a firm brush. Mine is a size 4, perfect for a 15 centimetre sheet. We'll start with light colours, and the reason for using a firm brush is that it offers more control. In this technique, we work in layers, so we'll use a minimal amount of water. Everything should be very dry and done with small, controlled movements. Notice that the centre of the flower is where these tiny elements are facing us. As they move upward, they begin to turn away, and similarly, as we move right or left, they shift in that direction. I'm painting these small flowers with light blue dots, with 4 or 5 petals depending on their position within the egg-shaped head. For the flowers at the top, they're so turned away from us that we barely see them. Instead, we notice more of the tiny thorns or hairs. As we move downwards, these flowers will be more centred, filling the entire thistle. As we go lower, we can use a slightly darker shade to add depth to these small flowers and thorns. I'm blending ultramarine with the remaining blue to fill in the spaces between the flowers. When adding these hairs, use quick, sharp movements, ensuring not to overfill. Leave some areas lighter, allowing the blue hairs to stand out. Some hairs may appear lower, but they're less visible. Now, in this second layer, I'm outlining the blue flowers and extending the thorns. At this stage, we can also add a bit of brown in certain spots on the blue flowers. If your ochre is too light, you can mix in a bit of sienna for a warmer brown tone. Now, let's move on to a darker colour. I'm switching to a smaller brush because I want to fill in the details more precisely. Before applying the darker shade, I'll use a fine brush to soften the edges of these small circles that make up the flower. The edges came out a bit sharp, so by gently blurring them I can create smoother transitions, which will also give the impression of shadows. Next, I'll take in Danthrin Blue. If you don't have this exact colour, you can try mixing something similar. In botanical painting, it's often better to use pre-mixed colours because they produce cleaner, fresher results. This is especially true for detailed work like this, where specific colours need to be applied in precise spots. We'll start by filling in the X shapes formed where the petals overlap. Remember, the darkest areas should be in the centre of these crosses, gradually lightening as they move outwards. These tiny flowers and thorns will rise upwards, shifting slightly to the right or left, depending on their position. Use small strokes to mimic the texture and shadows of the hairs and thorns on the thistle. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more art tutorials. You can also follow us on Patreon for exclusive content and early access to new lessons. If you'd like to support the channel directly, consider leaving a donation. Every bit helps us create more videos for you. Thanks again and happy drawing. I always recommend starting with the leaves that are furthest away. This gives your hand a chance to adjust, and if the colour isn't perfect, it's less noticeable. These distant leaves should have less contrast and a cooler tone. I'll mix a bit of yellow with the blue already on my palette to create a more natural shade. If you want to avoid overly bright colours, blend several tones in each leaf. More blue for cooler areas, and a touch of ochre towards the top. Add more blue for the tips of the leaves near the thistle. We'll continue layering and blending these colours to create a natural gradient. If your paper erases well, you can use the erasing technique. If not, use titanium white paint, definitely titanium, not zinc, as zinc whites are more transparent. Titanium white has abrasive qualities that allow it to both apply colour and lift it. You can apply it to the desired area and then erase it slightly, which also removes some of the underlying colour due to its chalky pigment. This technique is helpful for adding highlights to the middle of petals or the tips. After applying the white, you can add a bit of brown to the edges and blend it out. The edges of the thistle's petals are usually more blue or darker, so carefully blend this darker blue colour with a clean brush to soften the edges. We'll now paint an interesting petal that's slightly curved, allowing us to see both its inner and outer sides, which should differ in colour. It's good that we started with the distant petals. This gives you time to adjust if blending isn't going smoothly. Blending and spreading colour on different types of paper can vary, so take your time to feel how your pigments respond. Some pigments may require more or less paint, and you'll need to get used to how each paper reacts. Don't be afraid to add various colours to your leaves, though be cautious with yellow. It can be overpowering, especially in comparison to blue. Yellow pigments, especially those from Sonnet, are strong and can dominate the composition if used in the same intensity as blue. For now, we're avoiding yellow, but as we move closer to the centre of the flower, the front petals will become more yellow. Keep filling in the colours, blending browns at the edges and adding more blue where needed. The leaf that's directly in front of us should be warmer and more detailed, with a light, warm side facing us. Add more yellow to the mix for these warmer tones. For the first layers, mix various colours from the start, like lemon yellow with a touch of green near the thistle, transitioning into a deeper blue. You can also gently erase the centre of this leaf and add some blue there, either with paint or using white mixed with a bit of blue. When using white, it's best to mix the desired colour directly into the white instead of layering it on top. Finish by adding some reddish brown to the tips to depict the dry, brownish thorns. Regarding white paint, it's important to use titanium white, particularly from Van Gogh, as it's quite dense. However, avoid diluting it with water. Be careful to keep the white paint clean, as any mixing or layering can make the work look muddy. Maintaining the purity of the white paint is crucial for a clean look. If you prefer using gouache, note that it applies in thicker layers, which can be harder to control finely. Alternatively, a white gel pen can be used for drawing fine details like veins, though I prefer using titanium white from Van Gogh due to its strong pigmentation, allowing for clear white streaks. Zinc white, being more transparent, doesn't cover as effectively, and may appear as faint dirty grey lines instead. Continuing with the petals, observe where they need to be yellower or bluer and carefully blend the blue edges so they don't appear too sharp. You can also mix white with yellow for an interesting effect, achieving a covering colour that still adds highlights to veins without diluting their impact. As the petals dry, their colours may lighten, so avoid making them too dark. As they move further away, they should become less contrasted and more transparent. The lower parts, which are more in the background, don't need to be as detailed. I'm considering adding a few small leaves in the foreground, which I didn't initially sketch in pencil, but now feel are needed to balance the composition. I'll mix a bit of blue to cover the previous layer. Even though it's not ideal, it can work in this case. I'll add some small, almost blue leaves in the shadow areas to enhance depth. Finally, I'll add more detail to the tiny flowers by outlining their centres with blue, giving them more definition. The lower leaves will have warmer tones, yellowish with a hint of orange, while the shaded areas on the left side will be greener. With each layer after drying, you can add quick touches of colour to the distant leaves, not worrying about heavy detail, just ensuring they're present. Lastly, once everything is dry, you can add a few thin, dark green lines to the stem to finish the drawing. At some point, it's important to know when to step back and consider the piece complete. And there you have it, a beautiful and intricate drawing, all created from something as simple as a thistle. This shows how even the most unassuming plant can turn into a stunning and captivating artwork, looking just as impressive as a rose or any other flower. The result is vivid, detailed, and truly unique. I encourage you to observe the world around you, not just flowers, but all the little details that might often go unnoticed. Find beauty in the ordinary, and let it inspire you to draw more. Keep exploring, keep creating, and keep finding art in everyday life. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more art tutorials. You can also follow us on Patreon for exclusive content and early access to new lessons. If you'd like to support the channel directly, consider leaving a donation. Every bit helps us create more videos for you. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy drawing!